AFK Journey has been out for a little while now, and if you're caught up to the main story, you, like me, are probably degenning in PvP. And if you, like me, are hard stuck, I made this list of heroes who are best equipped to help you climb in PvP. This list is catered more towards arenas, but all heroes function the same way in all content, so if you find a team comp that works for you, take it into whatever content you want. Please note that these heroes are not ranked in any specific order, and your team may change based on what you have. You don't need any of these heroes to be a beast at PvP, but having at least one of these heroes may make climbing the PvP ladder a little bit easier. Starting with number 10, Granny Donnie. Granny Donnie is a tanky unit who needs no support due to her skills that deal a ton of damage and heal a ton of HP. She defends her allies by attacking the enemies that are damaging them, doing damage based on her HP pool, and healing based on her attack stat. She hits hard, can seem unkillable when paired with the right units, and can effectively protect allies with her taunt. With proper support and crowd control, Granny Donnie can effectively shut down the entire team if she's left unchecked. Number 9, Iron. You know what? I'm just gonna let that slide. If you're looking for a damage dealer that can bring the enemies on the field together so the rest of your team can dogpile on them like they're doing an all-out attack, Iron is a strong unit with good CC and self-shielding that increases his dodge rate. Although he definitely needs a tank in order to protect him from just falling over, Iron can do some serious damage if left unchecked. With more copies, he gains access to buffs and debuffs that will allow him to get a little bit more survivability, which means he can practically sweep through teams by himself if he's played correctly. Iron does tend to need a little or a few copies if your team comp isn't going strong enough, but he's definitely a worthwhile investment if you have him. Number 8, Rowan. Because of his design, playing Rowan feels a little bit like child labor, since he's going to be providing a lot of utility and support when he's on the field. Sure, he heals, but he's definitely not the best healer in the game. His true power is his energy regeneration skill. His ultimate recharges all allies within a certain range by a ridiculous amount. If positioned correctly, he can allow his entire team to just spam ultimates over and over again. Rowan's skill also allows him to regenerate energy if he still has potions to heal his team with. So if you play him with another healer, there's a potential for him to be able to be his own battery as well as the entire team's. He's a great unit overall. Number 7, Cessia. Cessia is an amazing marksman unit with an amazing personality, and she comes with a friend. This friend, Mr. Carlisle, can essentially act as a second tank while at the same time providing crowd control to all enemies around him. Cessia turns any 5v5 into a 6v5 in PvP, allowing her to keep resummoning Discount Solomon Grundy as long as she's got the energy to do so. The one downside to Cessia's damage is that a large portion of it is reliant on whether or not she actually has her version of Mr. X out on the field, which means she's very reliant on building energy towards her ultimate. If she doesn't get it, her damage plummets, so against the wrong team, she may struggle to output damage. Despite this, very few units can really stop Cessia at the moment, so she's a great addition to both attack and defensive formations. Number 6, Damien. This puntable sheep child is an A-rank support who provides a lot of great utility, especially as you get more copies of him. At first, it looks like Damien literally home alones the enemy team, sending a little toy chariot or plane to absolutely blow them up. Although the chariot replaces Damien on the field, it provides a lot of healing and energy to both his team and himself. However, after getting him to Mythic Plus, he gains a skill that allows him to hasten his entire team and basically ensure that they will be able to use their ultimates before the other team does. Because it's reliant on him having a toy chariot out in the field, it means that his team gains a buff every time Damien uses his ultimate. He slots great into almost all team comps and fits a niche that's hard to outshine him in, just due to how much utility he can provide in such a unique way. Number 5, Carolina. I'm honestly not sure if her name is Carolina or Carolina, so please bear with me because most of the time I'm playing this game it's with sound off. Carolina debuffs and CCs the enemy team, as well as deals massive amounts of damage based on how many times she debuffs and CCs her enemies. She has this unique effect called Frostbite, which reduces haste on anyone with stacks that's hit by her ult, which then reduces their ability to cast their ultimates. Oh, and it's reduced per stack, so the more she hits someone, the slower they get. With higher rarity, she can even use her snowballs to debuff defenses and deal even more damage. Whenever she uses her ultimate, Carolina also freezes her enemies in a large circle, completely immobilizing them. She may struggle a little bit at lower levels, but as you climb the ranks, Carolina will definitely provide more and more utility to the team, and is a great addition who synergizes well with a large portion of heroes. Number 4, Thorin. Thorin is overall the best tank in the game, even without mentioning his self-revive, which he has, by the way. That's pretty cool. Thorin provides a ton of great tanking skills and does a lot of damage, way more than he probably should as a tank. Oh, and if you're still curious about his self-revive, he can literally come back from the grave once per battle after taking fatal damage. At higher rarities, he also provides a ton of mitigation to his team members, specifically tying himself to one ally and taking on some of their damage over the course of battle or until Thorin dies for the first time. Between this protection and the amount of damage he does, Thorin solidifies himself as the best tank in the entire game. Number 3, Scarlita. Scarlita is a character that you might not see a lot at early levels, given that she's a celestial hero, but she's a solid one. She flies away at first, buffing herself as she stays in the air, relegating herself entirely to shielding her allies, until it's no longer her job and she decides to ruin someone's day. Once enough of her allies die, she literally dive bombs herself into the nearest enemies and deals splash damage upon impact. She then stays on the ground and just rips into the enemy team. As she goes up in rarity, she does more damage and buffs herself and her teammates even more. Scarlita definitely requires a little patience to acquire, but if you do have her, fielding her as part of your PvP squad is a great idea. Number 2, Odie. Good old Odie is an A-rank unit, but that doesn't mean that you should underestimate him. His kit is pretty straightforward. Do damage and poison enemies for strong damage over time. He's able to do this from a range, keeping him relatively safe. But that's all there is to him, at least at first. He takes a little while to warm up, but once you get him to Legendary Plus, he boosts his own attack speed until he's hitting enemies faster than Jinglu emptied my bank account. And at Mythic Plus, he unlocks a skill that allows him to immediately execute poisoned enemies who fall under a certain HP threshold, which is pretty good, especially when you're trying to rush down a beefy tank or healers like Huan. Just due to ease of access and his damage output, Odie is a great unit to have on any team. Real quick, we have some honorable mentions. First one is Parisa. As an A-rank unit, Parisa is a relatively easy unit to obtain, which makes obtaining copies of her even more feasible for free-to-play players. She does massive damage as well as buffs the ally she's positioned nearest over the course of battle, so positioning matters for her. She pairs great with a ton of units and can dish out massive damage on par with the damage done by mages like Carolina and Mariel. After investing in her, Parisa is able to take advantage of her skill to deal massive damage and mark enemies with flowers, which upon defeat will regenerate energy for her. This makes CC and good positioning even more essential for her than it already was, but the payoff is worth it. If you have Aaron, she pairs great with him to make comps that deal a ton of AoE damage after grouping up enemy units. The only downside is if your team comp is lacking, Parisa's going to wilt faster than a grocery store bouquet. Smokey and Mirky, my beloved. These guys may not do a lot of damage, but they're one of the best supports in the game thanks to their insane healing output and great buffs they output onto their team. Putting Smokey and Mirky in the backline means that they'll hit all allies within their range with an aroma that buffs their attack and haste, and heals them based off of Smirky's attack. I think I just gave them a ship name, which they also buff over the course of battle. The only reason Furry Octane didn't make it further onto this list is because they don't move much, since they're constantly out of commission thanks to their aroma. So they don't do much damage, if any, during fights, as well as barely move, so if you're looking to play a more frontline-oriented comp, you may limit your options. The last honorable mention is a newer character, Floribel. Now, Floribel is a late addition to the list, as this video was being written before she released. She's the first new unit to the game, unless you count Vala, who is like the first raid-up character, but we're not going to talk about that. She plays a bit like Seshia, summoning little units that she sends into battle. In lore, she's apparently a school teacher, so I'm guessing that the summons are her students, which I feel like that's kind of illegal. But Floribel is a unit who relies on her summons to do damage as she stays safe in the back line, with up to 3 summons on the field at a time doing a ton of damage to the enemy. In the right team comp, she can be incredibly annoying to deal with. Considering that putting Floribel on the field is equivalent to fielding 4 units, all with their own health pools, that Floribel can resummon over the course of battle, she's a one-girl army who you should never underestimate. And lastly, these aren't ordered, but number 1 is Rainier. Rainier is a pretty rough unit to get a hold of, since he's a Hypogean unit, but he's well worth trying to get if you can. Rainier is about as much of a support unit as Xiangling Genshin Impact. He supports his team by sending the enemy to the Shadow Realm. He protects his allies by swapping them around on the field, then restoring HP and energy to allies he's swapped. Rainier thrives in battles where he faces large numbers of enemies, making him an excellent unit for PvP. In fact, if he's outnumbered, he deals more damage and can trigger the abilities from his kit more often, including some extra passives as well. He deals heavy CC, buffs, heals, debuffs, clears your credit card debt, finds you a girlfriend, buys you a house, tells your family you love them, acts as your therapist. All that saying, Rainier is basically an invaluable hero to have on your team for late game story and PvP. He's great to play from advantage and from a disadvantage, and if you have him, use him. This is not a request, use Rainier. Let me know who your favorite units to use in PvP are in the comments, and I'll catch you guys next time.